in economics, and I turn out to be a senior sales associate, but that's okay. We always like to talk about our executive programs. I'll talk about them kind of quickly in two separate areas. We have both degree programs and non-degree programs. We have three different degree programs. One of them is a weekend program. That's pretty straightforward and simple to see. People come 26 weekends a year for 3 years and get an MBA from that. That's been a very popular program. We've started running that every single year. We're getting 60 to 65 people. We have one actually starting in January, and I know people always say this when they're trying to make a sale, but our spaces are almost full at this point, and they really are. Then we have two programs that follow a different format. We call it our EMBA and our IMM program, International Masters in Management. Those programs require people to be here for 2 weeks at a time, 6 times over a 2-year time period, 12 weeks being here. And it's really broken into 3 modules. That is 10 weeks of written assignments and homework. Then you're on campus for 2 weeks, in class 8 to 4, 6 days a week for 2 weeks. Then you're gone again for about 8 to 10 weeks. Then you're back for 2 weeks. Then you're gone for a week. Then you take finals. That's one module. We give you a month off. We do that 3 times in 22 months. And if you're still standing, okay? We have a lot of great teachers in that program. Anand teaches in our IMM program. Roger teaches international finance in our EMBA program. The one we do with the IMM follows the same approach, except we have 3 partners. We have a partner in Germany, a partner in the Netherlands, and a partner in Hungary. And so students take classes in all of those areas, and the fact that all of those geographic locations, the fact that they are traveling to be there 2 weeks at a time, makes that, I mean, there is travel cost involved. But if you have someone who's interested in an international MBA, the IMM is a great degree. Financial Times is going to release a ranking. It's embargoed for the news. I can tell you, but don't call your local newspaper until October 27th, that we're 15th in the world on that. I just wrote out a little internal memo for our faculty here and felt compelled to point out that being 15th in the world put us higher than Columbia, Berkeley, NYU, UCLA, Northwestern. Am I losing someone in here? Oh yeah, I'm Pepperdine. Well, but anyhow, that's a great program, and we do very well with that. Last week, the Wall Street Journal did that's an international executive MBA. Last week, the Wall Street Journal just did all executive MBAs, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were 21st in that. I mean, when you think of the hundreds of executive programs out there, we're pretty happy about that. What might be somewhat more relevant for you are our non-degree programs. We do a number of different non-degree programs. We break them down into 2 types, open enrollment and customized. Our open enrollment programs, we have essentially 2 of them. We're really focusing more on customized programs, but we do what we call an engineering management program every spring. It's we offer about 12 different courses where a course meets an hour and a half a day for 5 straight days. And if you have engineers who want to know something about finance or marketing or human resources, if you have an engineer that actually is willing to talk to a human being, you know, they may want to take some HR courses or something along that line. And so we run that program. And then we also have what we call, it's really a mini MBA program, 5 hours a day for 2 weeks. We actually started that for our PhD students in science who wanted to, rather than go into the academic world, go into the business world. And so in 2 weeks, we kind of give them just a smattering of being able to talk to other people. Finally, we do customized programs. We'll do programs for individual firms in specific areas or in general areas. We've done a course for Caterpillar, where we covered 5 different areas. We did a course for Pfizer Animal Health Europe. They sent people from Europe over here, and we did a couple of weeks for them focusing on finance, marketing, and so forth. And the pitch that I make in conjunction with this is that, as you are well aware, We have a great operations and global supply chain management group here, Anand Vinayak Deshpande and other people that we use, Suret Chan, that we use to teach in our programs. If you would be interested, if your firm can support, is large enough to support, maybe a dedicated program, it can be as short as a day, 2 days, on up to 5 days. We could do something like that. Or if there is some interest as you talk about maybe people coming together and having some kind of more than one firm, but sending people to talk about issues that you're talking about here today, where you have people that you think it would benefit them to kind of not just learn the rudiments, but really learn some of the applications and so forth. And I guess my final pitch along this line, which is one I always make when people come into any of our programs, both executive and the full-time MBA program, is that we are a research university, by and large. People often talk about, well, what's more important, research or teaching? I don't see the distinction. I've been at a research university for a long period of time, and it is almost an isomorphic mapping that the best researchers are also the best teachers, because they are people who are interested in their discipline, have a real intellectual curiosity about their discipline, and they're the people who are best prepared to carry that forward. And the kind of research that Anand Vinayak, Suresh, other people in the operations area are doing are keeping them on the cutting edge. And if you want to have employees who are staying on the cutting edge, I don't know any better place in the Midwest, perhaps in the United States, perhaps in the world, where you could come and get the kind of expertise that you could get here. And I don't know anything about it. I'm just a delivery system for it, right? I'm from the South, so I compare myself to grits. Grits are tasteless, but they're a delivery system for salt, pepper, and butter. In executive ed, I'm a delivery system for the darn fine research and teaching that we do here at the Krannert School. And so if you're interested in general, I should have brought 40 cards, but I'm still a prof. This is my email address, lynch@purdue.edu. Many people have an initial or a number. What this tells you is that I am the highest ranking Lynch at Purdue. I've been here longer than anybody else. I don't need to have an initial, I don't need to have a number, just Lynch, and it gets to me. If you're more interested in something specific that comes through Anand's center, contact him or contact Mary, and then we'll work together and see what we can do along that line. I thank Anand for giving me this opportunity to fulfill my role as Senior Sales Associate. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, our next discussion is going to involve data from the survey we got this morning. And Roger has volunteered to, I've been telling you about Roger. One of the things, he's one of the few guys in our finance group who's ready to come to a discussion involving global supply chain management. Another person I want to introduce is Mark Bagnoli. Mark is from our accounting area, and we've had several conversations about the issue of working capital, risk, etc. And Mark was also featured in a discussion that Krannert initiated about the current economic environment. So I'm going to have them both as resources available. Roger's going to start by looking at the PowerPoint, but we're going to rope in Mark as appropriate to get us to really understand what's going on. So, and this is going to take me a second. I first have to escape. And I'm going to go here.
While he's doing that, I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit more about the subject and introduce you to a couple other people. And oh, by the way, you should look forward to talking to Mark. Mark and a few of the other professors at Krannert explained to the student body what was going in the market about 30 days ago, and I can tell you the heavens opened, and people were brilliant after that conversation was completed. So just have all your good questions for Mark, because he'll be able to help you out with that. At any rate, my name is Roger Stewart. I'm an adjunct professor of finance in the finance organization here. I teach international finance, and I teach a capital markets class. I spent about 30 years of my career working with one of Tom's competitors. I worked for Procter & Gamble. Just a piece of information, it's just it's how different companies are. You were talking about you negotiate contracts in dollars. At P&G, we used to say, just pick your currency, we'll pay it if you can get it at the lowest cost. We think we can hedge cheaper than you can. And so it's just an indication of how different companies approach the level of risk differently. I want to introduce you then also from this point in time to two of our fine honors undergraduate students. They are Matt Bartlett and Laura Keitlinger. I've known Matt for about 6 or 8 months, and I've known Laura for about 2 or 3 years. She is foolish enough to take her second honors class with me. Matt doesn't know yet what he's getting into. This is his first one. And there'll be a little bit of a part about what we want to talk here today. I spent a lot of time with Ananth talking about risk, and he and I have a tendency to stir the pot quite frequently and believe that there are a lot of areas of common interest to finance and global supply chain or operations management. He and I both strongly believe that one of the key things that people are interested in today, or one of the key areas, is the overall area of enterprise risk management. And some of the speakers talked about that. I believe Tom talked about being able to share with your board of directors what the major risks are, or with your senior management, what are the major areas of risk that could impact your firm. So that's where our heart really lies. However, it's such a complex subject, we started, Matt and Laura, working in sort of a subset of that over the course of the last several months, and that was the area of supply chain finance. And so the extent to which your suppliers cannot finance themselves, or with you in dealing with your customers where you ask them to help you finance your business, we believe is an important subject. We believe it is a way to take risk out of the equation, number one, or it is a way to reduce the ultimate cost of borrowing or debt. Now, my background is in Treasury. There is nothing I hate more than paying bank fees and interest expense. And so I always look for ways to reduce the cost of funding the business. And both Professor Iyer and I believe that supply chain finance is one area to get at that. And we're going to make these two students prove our theory by the time they get out of the class. Now, over the course, they started last fall working on this project, and in fact, we agreed to it last spring. Well, we've had, as I described in my international finance class this morning, the perfect storm. Interest rates are high. Liquidity is not available. The dollar has had a 1 in 100-year move against the major currencies around the world, and if you're an exporter, it's to the bad side. It's a 1 in 100 move against the wrong direction. And if you, as a firm, brilliantly locked in $110 oil, thinking that it was going to soar above the 140, that's the perfect storm. Your cost of business is high, you can't come up with money, you have a horrible foreign exchange risk problem, and you got yourself on the wrong side of the commodity part of the business. So a lot has changed over the course of just the last 6 weeks. And from a point of operations, that has driven changes to the manufacturing process, we believe, delivered changes to product definition, so on and so forth, and that is what prompted the survey from this morning. So, broadly speaking, the questionnaire was trying to get at, have there been operational changes, batch sizes, delivery quantities, contracts, lead time, and whatever? Have there been changes in requests by customers and suppliers on the credit side? Have you altered your product definition to keep up with the market? And I think I've heard that said over the course of the afternoon, if not in the last 6 weeks, at least over the course of the last year or two. And have there been supply chain financial initiatives taking place over the course of the last 6 weeks in particular, or maybe over the course of the last year or two, that are changed? 94% of you said that you are adjusting your business model. 94%. That describes the world we're in today. 61 evidently are changing your product line as a result of what's happened in the economic environment over the course of the last several months. 83% of you are changing your purchasing policies. 83% are revisiting decisions on such as days of inventory, things like that, items that drive working capital. And 33% of you are changing your delivery contacts. So operations is a very different ballgame today than it was 6 weeks ago, or more so than it was a year ago. Some people are relaxing accounts receivable to help their business out, and 18% are tightening it. So there have been changes in policy. Some are changing how frequently you pay your bills. Some are reducing inventories. But what is of interest to us, and it ties into this study, is 33% of the firms are under direct pressure from your suppliers to help them work with the bank to get financing. Or, pardon me, are not with the bank, are working directly with you to improve financing. That can either be in the form of extending their payable or extending your receivable or prepaying. 44% of you are saying that your suppliers are asking you to help indirectly, which says you're meeting with the bank and helping them get financing. Now, we didn't go into the specifics. Is that simply the case of you introduce them to the bank, show the bank the contract, and then see if the bank will lend to them directly? Or are you sitting down with the bank and saying, I will take part of the credit risk associated with that? We didn't get into that much detail. But what the survey is suggesting to us is that in the environment we are in, providing financing for your suppliers, or you as a supplier to a larger company, is important and becoming increasingly important. I would suggest it's probably survival in a number of cases. And at the minimum, it's a way to reduce costs and reduce risk in total. So with all of that as background, Professor and I are proposing two things. First, we would propose that we create either sort of a breakfast meeting or a conference call-in and use that as an opportunity to talk about in the environment that we are in. What is that doing to change your operations process, and what is it doing to potentially change the way you're financing your business or your suppliers are asking you to help them finance their business? Is it a case of misery loves company, we can share notes and make each other smarter, or we can share the information from what we know as a faculty to potentially help you out? That's first. Second, we have two people that have been foolish enough to volunteer to work with us. And we have a number of others on campus. Are there ways that Purdue students and the faculty can be a potential help to you as firms in managing your business, be it run analytics, take a look at processes, or things like that, and have our involvement to help you out? So that's the proposition on the table. And we're curious if there are any people in the room that believe that those are viable alternatives. Thoughts? Anybody interested? No is a socially acceptable answer. Tim?
Yeah, I think an exploratory would be very interesting. I mean, I don't think at any prior point in time has it been more important to really spend a lot of time on the subject. And many of us have probably just spent a little bit of time on it. Now it's becoming extremely important.
Okay.
We've already had situations where companies have gone belly up, and they haven't been key suppliers of ours, but it's coming. So, I mean, there's no doubt about that. So, probably the more, if you guys could provide a forum where we could at least start on a conversational basis, see what might come out of it, it probably would be very valuable.
Are there others?
I also want, at this point, want to bring in Mark into the conversation. One of the things that I've chatted with Mark a little bit is both issues with respect to working capital and issues with respect to sort of enterprise risk as viewed from the perspective of accounting. And we have a very large accounting program, and so Mark can tell us a little bit about his perspective on this as a one component of enterprise risk.
A couple of details. You may be familiar with a number of companies. Your companies may have actually done it, taken a write-off because they had to lower the value of cash and cash equivalents in the last year and a half. Many of you thought that cash was a risky asset. It turns out to be, especially if you got involved in the auction security market. This is a long-term, concern. Other things, the accounting for hedging has a huge impact on your decisions about how to hedge your risks. Southwestern reported this a couple of days ago, last week, something like that, the first loss in 19 quarters. Why? They hedge their price of oil. Was it a bad hedge? But the security part of the hedge lost an enormous amount of value. And that gets filtered through and results in a loss as they report their financials. How does this affect the way you think about managing your risk? Okay? Other types of risk involve getting your accounting firms, your auditors, or your internal control people to begin to look at the kinds of risks that are potentially financial risks that are associated with your supply chains, with working with entities that are less familiar to you than they might be. And how might you be able to fold in their activities in helping you? Some of these accounting firms, the major firms, are worldwide. They have lots and lots of expertise out there. Your internal control people can be trained to help assess those types of risks. So those are some of the things that we've been thinking about.
So one of the things on the table is, as Roger mentioned and as Mark alluded to, one of the things we're thinking about is we're, as a group, as a center, as a school, there's interest, if there is interest from a large number of, we think, smaller companies, because the larger companies would have your staff and you would have your risk mitigation, et cetera. This is probably more appropriate for smaller companies, and it could also be smaller suppliers within your supply base that you might recommend this as a potential asset. And what does this mean? This would mean, at least in the short run, Laura and Matt being involved, along with all of us, to try to collect data in a more systematic fashion. The data that was presented here was the survey this morning. There were 18 pieces of data, just as a full disclosure, that was used to provide that information. That could expand into a much larger set. There could be roles we could identify at the, Don talked about the business environment, to the extent that the business environment has to adjust to sort of, in some case, I don't know the right word is, shepherd is the right word, or whatever it is, the local Indiana smaller manufacturers or businesses, they might be a mechanism whereby they could play a role. We had John Schneider and I think Jeff Gunshire, who's here, who mentioned that through various organizations, they could facilitate. But all of this would be a moot point if you basically say, hey, one perspective is, this is yesterday's problem. By the time we read the Wall Street Journal tomorrow, that $250 billion is going to make its way through the system or whatever it is, and the problem is yesterday's problem. That could be the case. Or other people say it's going to be a 9-month, 12-month, several-year problem. We don't know. So the question is whether there's an interest, whether there'd be either you as a bigger OEM could say, hey, there are a whole bunch of smaller companies in our supply chain who would benefit, and part of our job would be to first collect data regarding what is right now, what are the leverage points, and take examples. I think Ted provided an example of how his company has created a portfolio and adjusted various components. That's the kind of discussion we're trying to do. So, any questions, comments, or examples of other such entities which already exist that we could learn from?
Not just a comment, and that is that, of course, anything that we can try to do to help our businesses be more competitive, we're certainly interested in supporting. If there's a draw on that, then certainly we're happy to work with you to support that. When it comes to supply chain, I think one of the we're talking here specifically about supply chain financing. We chatted a little earlier about how to get these smaller companies to be able to get the commodity pricing that will be successful for it. That would be helpful. The other is I'm trying to make sure I pick sort of the right words about what this might be, but basically the idea of trying to help Indiana businesses connect with global supply chain decision makers. Now that's not necessarily a supply chain finance issue, but it is an issue of making sure that there's awareness in the supply chain of what we have here. And that's harder. You know, it used to be you might go call and whoever was down the street, and now you're doing some business with a company that's 600 miles away or separated by an ocean. So, so those things would also be an issue.
The thoughts, comments?
Are you parts of other business organizations that do things like this already? This repetitive work.
Or actually, framed differently, who are you talking to regarding this problem?
Yeah.
Anybody, or are you just sorting it out yourself? Because from our perspective, we don't want to replicate anything that already exists. And so the thesis on the table is there's value to having discussions regarding all the leverage points and how they're working out. At this point, it's a thesis. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll leave you with that thought, and one of the things that that I want to sort of wrap with is part of our goal today was to communicate that from a Cranard perspective, there is significant interest, there is significant faculty interest, and once there's faculty interest, we can find a way to connect students into ways that they can play proactive roles. Initially, some of these roles could be purely exploratory. I mean, Matt and Laura working as part of an independent study. So from that perspective, these are ways that it could start. This could also evolve into something more substantial. We certainly have a very large accounting undergraduate program where some of this could be worked in, depending on the nature of it. Yeah, so this is an opportunity. So just ponder it. If you work for a large OEM and you think this might be something that would be useful, think about it. Give us a call. Mary is the right point of contact because she will see to it that all the planes are flying. My emails get clogged up, but Mary's don't. So because she keeps them all perfectly operating. So that's something for you to be thinking about. So please think about it. Give us a call, and then this can play a role. One of the things we're even thinking about, if there is sufficient interest, is that it could be the focus of our spring conference. If there is significant interest in many of the issues we've talked about. And the issues include something broadly termed supply chain finance, but it includes many components. It includes issues of risk. Mark talked a little bit about the auditors helping to assess that risk globally, but there are issues with respect to the exchange rates. I mean, we just had two large companies in the consumer products business with very different perspectives on how they view exchange risk. A lot of us, as I mentioned before, the discussion regarding the dollar was a different discussion last month versus this month. And so a lot of that is going to have a significant impact on the running of an operation. So if there are a couple of thoughts I'd like to leave you with, it is we are at a university, so in some sense you could say you're shepherded from all of this. Yes, but our students are not. And yes, but our alumni are not. So this is something that is an important component in the classroom. It was one of the exam questions last week, so it has already made its way into the exams. So this is something that at least on the academic side, it's opportunities like these. I shouldn't use the word opportunity, but situations like these 1 in a million, we've never seen it before, when academics, discussions, etc., can help steer a course. Because there's no game plan saying do ABC. So this is something we're going to sort of devise. As a center, we're continuing to try to find a way to play a role in this discussion. Some of the discussions and some of the comments by the faculty are testament to that. One of the things we hope you will do is provide us feedback, because one thing that we've realized that whatever we do, we can do better. And if we didn't, then there's something wrong with us. So we can definitely do some things better. We always try to figure out a mechanism whereby you're engaged through the course of the day, you connect with students, you learn about faculty, we have discussions, etc. And a lot of these things are just sort of a guess. What we'd like to do is have your feedback. We are already starting to plan things for our spring conference. We've locked in a keynote speaker, the date, the rooms, etc. As I was telling somebody yesterday, planning in the university is 10, 20 years down the road. So we've reserved dates for till 2015 or 2020. We've signed rules, etc. Because everybody else plans 20 to 50